Everyone in that courtroom thought the case of Thorne versus Thorne was an open and shut tragedy. On one side stood Derek Thorne, successful, arrogant, and flanked by a ruthless legal team. On the other stood Emma, wearing a thrift store dress, silent and seemingly defeated. They called her a leech. They called her a failure. They laughed when she asked for a fair settlement. But they made one fatal mistake. They didn't check who Emma really was before she married Derek. They thought they were crushing a helpless housewife, but they were actually waking up a sleeping giant worth billions. And by the time the truth came out, it was too late to run. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime stick harder. Emma stood under the concrete overhang of the King County Superior Court, shivering slightly. It wasn't just the damp chill of November that had settled into her bones. It was the suffocating weight of dread. She pulled her beige trench coat tighter. It was old, 5 years old to be exact, and the hem was fraying. She had bought it at a discount rack when she and Derek were first married, back when he was an ambitious nobody and she was just Emma from the coffee shop. Or so he thought. A sleek obsidian black Mercedes S-Class pulled up to the curb, splashing a mix of oil and rainwater onto the sidewalk just inches from Emma's worn boots. The driver's door didn't open. Instead, the back door swung wide. Derek stepped out. He looked like $1 million, mostly because he was wearing about 10,000 of it. His suit was bespoke Italian wool. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine, and his face held that look of smug indifference that Emma had come to loathe. He wasn't alone. Jessica slid out from the other side. She was 23, a former fitness instructor, and currently the vice president of marketing at Derek's tech firm, a position she was woefully unqualified for. She clung to Derek's arm, her red soles clicking sharply on the pavement. She looked at Emma, not with pity, but with the specific cruelty reserved for the victorious. "You're still here?" Derek asked, his voice smooth and condescending as he approached. He stopped 3 feet away, as if getting closer might infect him with poverty. "I told your public defender to take the deal, Emma. $5,000 in the old Honda. It's generous." "I don't want your charity, Derek," Emma said, her voice quiet but steady. "I want what is fair. I supported you for 7 years. I paid the rent while you coded that app in our living room. I paid for the servers." Jessica let out a sharp barking laugh. "Oh, honey, you bought groceries. Derek built an empire. Don't confuse making sandwiches with making millions." Derek smirked, checking his Rolex. "Jessica's right. Look at you, Emma. You're pathetic. You have no job, no prospects, and no money. My lawyer, Mr. Ritter, Coburn, is going to destroy you in there. He's going to prove that you were nothing but a financial drain on my potential. If you step into that courtroom, you walk away with zero. Take the $5,000. Go buy yourself some new clothes. You look tired." Emma looked at the man she had once loved. She remembered holding him when he cried because investors had rejected him. She remembered transferring her savings into his account anonymously so his company wouldn't go under during the first year. He had never asked where the money came from. He was too arrogant to question his own luck. "I'm not taking the deal," Emma said, lifting her chin. Her eyes, usually a soft hazel, were hard as flint. Derek's face darkened. The charm evaporated. "Fine, then I'll make sure the judge knows about your instability. I'll make sure you don't just lose the case, Emma. I'll make sure you're humiliated. I'll ruin your reputation so badly you won't be able to get a job scrubbing toilets in this city." He turned his back on her, guiding Jessica toward the revolving doors. "Come on, babe. Let's get this over with so we can make our lunch reservation at Canlis." "I hope she cries," Jessica whispered loud enough for Emma to hear. "I love it when they cry." Emma watched them go. She reached into her pocket and touched the cold metal of a USB drive. She wasn't waiting for a public defender. She was waiting for someone else. A heavy black SUV, an Escalade with tinted windows and diplomatic plates, pulled up quietly behind where Derek's Mercedes had been. A man in a dark gray suit stepped out. He was older, with silver hair and the posture of a retired general. He held a large black umbrella, opening it instantly and stepping to Emma's side to shield her from the rain. "Ms. Vanderwall," the man said softly, using the name she hadn't heard in 7 years. "Are you ready?" "Hello, Arthur," Emma said, exhaling a breath she felt like she'd been holding since the divorce papers were served. "Is the team in position?" "The team is inside," Arthur replied, his voice low. "Mr. Sterling flew in from Zurich this morning. He is eager. He didn't take kindly to the transcripts of the deposition." "Good," Emma said. She unbuttoned the frayed trench coat, revealing a simple yet impeccably tailored black dress underneath. It looked plain to the untrained eye, but the fabric was a rare vicuña wool blend that cost more than Derek's car. "Let's go, Arthur. I think my husband is expecting a slaughter." "He will get one, ma'am," Arthur said, opening the door to the court for her. Just not the one he envisioned. Courtroom 4B smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. The Honorable Judge Harrison sat on the bench. He was a man known for his impatience with domestic squabbles. He adjusted his glasses, looking down at the docket. On the right side of the room sat Derek Thorne. He looked relaxed, leaning back in his chair, whispering something into the ear of Jessica, who was sitting in the gallery directly behind him. Next to Derek was Marcus Coburn, a divorce attorney known in Seattle as the Butcher. Coburn charged $900 an hour and had a reputation for leaving ex-wives destitute. On the left side, the table was empty. "Mr. Coburn," Judge Harrison rumbled, "where is the respondent I don't have all day?" Coburn stood up, buttoning his jacket. "Your Honor, it appears Mrs. Thorne has gotten cold feet. Or perhaps she couldn't afford the bus fare. As we discussed in the pre-trial motion, the defendant has a history of erratic behavior and financial irresponsibility. We move for a default judgment in favor of my client, granting full retention of assets and denying spousal support." Derek covered his mouth to hide a grin. This was too easy. "I'll give her 5 more minutes, Judge Harrison grumbled. "If she's not." The heavy oak doors at the back of the courtroom swung open with a resounding thud. The room went silent. Emma walked in. She didn't walk with the shuffled gait of the defeated woman Derek had seen outside. She walked with a stride that was smooth, predatory, and confident. Arthur, her personal attendant, stayed by the door, closing it softly. But it wasn't Emma that made Marcus Coburn, the shark lawyer, freeze. It was the man walking beside her. He was tall, wearing a charcoal 3-piece suit that fit so perfectly it looked like a second skin. He carried no briefcase, only a single slim file folder. He had a face that had graced the cover of Forbes and the American Lawyer magazine multiple times. It was Elias Sterling, the founding partner of Sterling Roth and Partners. He didn't handle divorces. He handled mergers of nations. He handled international trade disputes. He was the kind of lawyer you couldn't hire just because you had money. You had to have power. Derek frowned, leaning toward Coburn. "Who's that guy? Where's her public defender?" Coburn's face had gone pale. That's Elias Sterling." "Is he good?" Derek asked, oblivious. "Derek!" Coburn hissed, sweat instantly beading on his upper lip. "He doesn't do family law. He sued the European Union last year and won. Why is he walking with your wife?" Emma and Sterling reached the defendant's table. Emma sat down, crossing her legs elegantly. Sterling placed the single folder on the table and remained standing. "State your name for the record," Judge Harrison said, looking over his spectacles, clearly intrigued by the sudden shift in atmosphere. "Elias Sterling," the lawyer said. His voice was a rich baritone that seemed to vibrate off the wood paneling. "Representing the respondent, Mrs. Emma. Well, legally, she is Mrs. Thorne, but we will be filing a motion to restore her birth name immediately." "Mr. Sterling," the judge said, raising an eyebrow, "this is a simple division of assets case. I'm surprised to see a man of your caliber here." "It is only simple if the plaintiff has been honest. Your Honor," Sterling said, shooting a glance at Derek that made Derek feel like a bug under a microscope. and my client contends that Mr. Thorne has been anything but honest. Coburn shot up. Objection! This is grandstanding. My client is a respected tech mogul. Mrs. Thorne is an unemployed housewife who is clearly spending her last dime on a fancy lawyer to intimidate us. It won't work. Sterling smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Spending her last dime, Mr. Coburn. We haven't even broken the petty cash box yet. Enough. Judge Harrison banged the gavel. Opening statements. Mr. Coburn, go. Coburn cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. He walked to the center of the room, turning his back on Emma to address the judge. He went into his practiced routine. Your Honor, we are here today because of a tragedy. The tragedy of a successful man being dragged down by a partner who refuses to contribute. Derek Thorne built ThorneTech from nothing. He worked 18-hour days. He sacrificed his health. And what did Emma Thorne do? He gestured vaguely at Emma. She stayed home. She claimed she was keeping house, yet the house was managed by cleaners paid for by my client. She claims she supported him, but she has no tax records of employment for the last 6 years. She is a ghost in the financial system. She is a classic example of a hypergamous partner seeking to cash out on a lottery ticket she didn't buy. We are asking that the premarital assets remain separate, that the company remains 100% under Mr. Thorne's control, and that alimony be denied on the grounds that Mrs. Thorne is fully capable of working, yet chooses not to. Coburn smirked at the gallery. Jessica nodded vigorously, whispering, Yes, tell them. She brought nothing to the table, Coburn concluded, slamming his hand on the railing, and she deserves to leave with nothing. Derek looked at Emma, expecting to see tears. Instead, Emma was checking her cuticles. She looked bored. Mr. Sterling, the judge asked. Elias Sterling stood up. He didn't walk to the center of the room. He stood right next to Emma, placing a hand on her shoulder. Your Honor, Sterling began, his voice conversationally low, forcing everyone to lean in. Mr. Coburn asks what my client brought to the table. That is a valid question. He picked up the slim file folder. Mr. Thorne believes he is a self-made man. He believes his company ThorneTech was built on his genius alone. He believes my client was a destitute woman he rescued from a coffee shop. Sterling walked slowly toward the witness stand, locking eyes with Derek. But what Mr. Thorne fails to realize is that the coffee shop where they met, she owned the building. The apartment they lived in for the first 3 years, she owned the complex. And the initial seed funding of $500,000 that mysteriously appeared from an angel investor named VW Holdings when ThorneTech was about to go bankrupt. Sterling paused for effect. The silence in the room was deafening. VW stands for Vander Wall Wright, my client's maternal holding company. Derek's eyes went wide. That's a lie, he shouted, standing up. VW is a venture capital firm in Delaware. Sit down, Mr. Thorne, Judge Harrison barked. Sterling turned back to the judge. We are not here to ask for half of Mr. Thorne's money, Your Honor. We are here to reveal that Mr. Thorne doesn't actually have any money, because every asset he thinks he owns is collateralized by loans held by my client's trust. We are not here for a settlement. Sterling's smile turned razor sharp. We are here for a foreclosure. The courtroom buzzed like a kicked hornet's nest. Judge Harrison had to bang his gavel 3 times hard before the noise subsided. Derek Thorne had sunk back into his chair, his face a mask of confusion and rising panic. He leaned over to Coburn. What is he talking about? VW Holdings is a shell company out of Delaware. I've never met them. We communicated via email. Coburn was flipping through papers frantically. You told me you had full equity. You told me the seed money was a grant. It was, Derek hissed. I never paid it back, and they never asked for it. Mr. Thorne, take the stand, Sterling commanded. It wasn't a request. Derek walked to the witness box. He adjusted his tie, trying to regain the air of the CEO. He was Derek Thorne. He had been on the cover of Tech Monthly. He wasn't going to let some fancy lawyer rattle him. Mr. Thorne, Sterling began, pacing in front of the stand, You claim you are the sole architect of Thorntech's success. You claim my client Emma was a financial burden. Is that correct? Yes, Derek said, his voice firm. Emma didn't understand the industry. She spent her days reading novels and drinking tea while I was grinding, meeting investors, and coding. Coding? Sterling repeated the word as if it tasted sour. Interesting. Let's talk about the Hydra protocol. That is the core algorithm of your software, is it not? Derek blinked. Yes, it's proprietary. It is, Sterling agreed. And it was broken on the night of March 14th, 2021. Do you remember that night? Derek hesitated. He did remember. He had been crying on the bathroom floor drunk because the code wouldn't compile and the launch was the next day. He had passed out. When he woke up, the code was fixed. He assumed he had done it in a blackout fugue state. I remember working late, Derek said. Sterling turned to the gallery. Arthur, Exhibit C, please. Arthur stood up and handed a tablet to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. The screen was cast onto the large monitor on the wall. It was a time-stamped log of the coding repository. This is the commit log from 3:00 a.m. that night, Sterling said. Mr. Thorne, can you read the username of the person who fixed the fatal bug? Derek squinted at the screen. It says, Ghostwriter. And who is Ghostwriter? Sterling asked. I don't know. Maybe one of my freelancers. No, Mr. Thorne. Ghostwriter is the handle for a user with the IP address 192.168.1.5. That is the IP address of the laptop sitting on your kitchen table. The laptop registered to Emma Vanderwall. The gallery gasped. Jessica in the back looked confused. He told me he wrote that code, she whispered to no one. My client, Sterling continued, his voice rising, is a graduate of MIT with a double major in computer science and economics. She didn't tell you because you, Mr. Thorne, have a fragile ego. She fixed your code while you slept off a bottle of whiskey. She saved your launch, and you call her a burden. She went to beauty school, Derek stammered. She told me she barely finished high school. She lied, Sterling said coldly, to protect you from feeling inferior, a task she clearly failed at given your current behavior. Sterling walked back to his table and picked up a thick document bound in blue leather. But let's return to the money. You stated VW Holdings was an angel investor. You signed a convertible note agreement in 2019. Do you know what a convertible note is, Mr. Thorne? It turns debt into equity, Derek said confidently. Standard practice. Usually, yes. But did you read the trigger clause on page 45, paragraph 7? Derek swallowed. My lawyers at the time looked at it. You didn't have lawyers at the time, Derek. You used an online template service because you were too cheap to hire counsel. Sterling deadpanned. Paragraph 7 states, if the principal borrower files for divorce or attempts to liquidate marital assets prior to repayment, the full amount of the loan plus 150% interest becomes immediately due. Failure to pay results in the lender seizing all intellectual property associated with the borrower. Sterling slammed the document shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Emma isn't asking for half your company, Derek. VW Holdings Emma is activating the trigger clause. You owe VW Holdings $12 million as of this morning. Do you have $12 million, Mr. Thorne? Derek looked at Coburn. Coburn had his head in his hands. I have assets. The house, the cars, the offshore accounts. Sterling smiled. Ah, the house. Let's talk about the house. Judge Harrison was leaning forward now, his chin resting on his hand. He looked like he was watching a gladiator match. Continue, Mr. Sterling. Mr. Thorne, Sterling said, you live at 4500 Lakeview Boulevard, a stunning property. Zillow estimates it at $4.5 million. You listed it on your financial affidavit as a marital asset to be divided. That's right, Derek said, finding a shred of defiance. I paid the mortgage every month. You paid a monthly fee, Sterling corrected. But you didn't pay a mortgage. You paid rent. What I signed the deed. You signed a lease-to-own agreement with a holding company called Argos Realty, Sterling said. You really should pay more attention to the names of these companies, Derek. Argos, the ship of Jason and the Argonauts. Who was the captain? Derek stared blankly. It doesn't matter, Sterling waved his hand. Argos Realty is a subsidiary of the Vanderwall Trust. You have been paying rent to your wife's family trust for 5 years. You don't own a single brick of that house. And since you violated the lease terms by moving your mistress, Ms. Jessica Tate, into the property 2 weeks ago, Sterling pointed a finger at Jessica in the gallery. She froze. You have voided the lease. Eviction notices were posted on the door 1 hour ago. The locks have already been changed. You kicked me out of my own house, Derek screamed, standing up. Sit down, Judge Harrison roared. Mr. Thorne, if you outburst again, I will hold you in contempt. Derek collapsed into his chair, breathing heavily. He looked at Jessica. She was furiously typing on her phone. And speaking of Ms. Tate, Sterling said, shifting his focus, your affidavit claims that as VP of Marketing she is essential to the business and her salary of $250,000 is justified. She works hard, Derek muttered. We have forensic accounting records here. Sterling held up a flash drive. Ms. Tate has charged $45,000 in client dinners to the company card in the last 3 months. Interestingly, these dinners took place in Paris, Milan, and Cabo San Lucas. While the company has no clients in those regions, Sterling turned to the judge. Your Honor, since Thorntech is technically collateral owned by my client due to the defaulted loan, Ms. Tate hasn't been spending Mr. Thorne's money. She has been embezzling my client's money. Jessica gasped, loud enough to be heard. She stood up. I didn't know. He told me it was his company. He told me she was a nobody. Jessica, shut up, Derek yelled. Ms. Tate, Sterling said, his voice cutting across the room. I suggest you sit down and remain silent, unless you want to be added as a co-defendant in the upcoming fraud lawsuit. Jessica sat down so hard the bench creaked. She scooted several inches away from where she had been sitting, directly behind Derek. So, Sterling summarized, looking at Derek with pity, you don't own the company, you don't own the house. The cars are leased through the company which you don't own. You have $12 million in debt triggered today, and you have exposed your partner to criminal liability. Sterling leaned in close to the witness stand, his voice dropping to a whisper that the microphone still caught perfectly. You called Emma a leech, Derek, but it seems you were the parasite all along. You were feeding on a host so large you couldn't even see the edges of it. Derek looked at Emma. She was looking at him, but there was no anger in her eyes anymore. Just a profound disappointment. It was the look you give a child who breaks a toy because they didn't understand its value. Why? Derek croaked. If she has all this, why did she act poor? Why the old clothes? Why the Honda? That, Sterling said, standing straight, is the question of the hour, and to answer it I would like to call Emma Vanderwall to the stand. Emma stood up. The silence in the room was different now. Before it was the silence of judgment. Now it was the silence of awe. She walked to the stand. She didn't look like a downtrodden housewife anymore. The posture that Derek had mistaken for submission was actually the restraint of someone who knows they are the most dangerous person in the room. Ms. Vanderwall, Sterling said gently, the court is confused. Mr. Thorne is confused. Why the charade? Emma adjusted the microphone. Her voice was clear, educated, and resonant. I didn't lie to you, Derek, she said, looking directly at her husband. I omitted truths you never asked for. I am the granddaughter of Cornelius Vanderwall. The judge's eyebrows shot up. The steel magnate, the man who built the railroads in the Northwest. Yes, Your Honor, Emma acknowledged. My family believes that wealth should be guarded. We are taught that people will love you for your money, not your soul. When I turned 21, I inherited a trust fund that is substantial, but I wanted to be loved for me. She looked at Derek, her eyes watering slightly. I met you in that coffee shop. You didn't know who I was. You bought me a latte with your last $5. You were passionate. You had a dream. I fell in love with your drive, Derek. I wanted to build a life with you, not buy one for you. So you tested me, Derek spat. For 7 years. No, I supported you. I wanted you to feel the pride of building something yourself. If I had just written you a check on day one, you would never have learned how to run a business. Or so I thought. She sighed. I lived on a budget because I wanted us to be partners. When you couldn't pay rent, I moved money around so we wouldn't be evicted. When you needed a car, I bought the Honda so we could save for your servers. I wore old clothes so you could buy suits for your investor meetings. I made myself small so you could feel big. Emma wiped a tear. But then the money started coming in. The company started to succeed. And instead of being grateful for the partner who stood by you in the dirt, you started to look down on me. You started to believe your own hype. You thought because I didn't wear Prada, I wasn't worth your time. You mocked me for couponing. Emma said, her voice trembling with emotion. You told your friends I had a poverty mindset. But Derek, I wasn't saving money because I had to. I was saving money because I was trying to save us. She looked at Jessica. And then you found someone who looked the part. Someone who spent money as fast as you made it. And you thought that was class. You thought that was success. Emma turned back to the judge. I hid my identity because I wanted a real marriage. But Mr. Thorne didn't want a partner. He wanted a prop. And when the prop didn't shine bright enough, he tried to throw it away. Sterling stepped forward. Ms. Vanderwall, what are you asking the court for today? I am asking for the dissolution of the marriage, Emma said firmly. I am enforcing the debt owed to VW Holdings. I am seizing control of Thorntech to protect the employees from Mr. Thorne's mismanagement. And I am asking that Mr. Thorne vacate my properties immediately. And regarding alimony, Sterling asked. Emma looked at Derek, who was pale, sweating, and shaking. I don't need his money, Emma said. He needs it, but he can't have it. I ask that he be left with exactly what he came into this marriage with, his ambition. Let's see if he can build it again without my safety net. No, Derek shouted, jumping up. You can't do this. I built that company. It's mine. Mr. Coburn? Judge Harrison interrupted, his voice like granite. I have seen the documents. The debt is clear. The ownership of the intellectual property is clear. Your client is effectively bankrupt. Your Honor, we need a recess, Coburn pleaded. We need to negotiate. There is no negotiation, Sterling said smoothly. But there is one more thing. Sterling pulled a final piece of paper from his folder. During the discovery phase, we found emails between Mr. Thorne and a distinct offshore account in the Cayman Islands. It seems Mr. Thorne was trying to hide assets from what he thought was a poor wife. Hiding assets during a divorce proceeding is a felony, Your Honor. Derek froze. But here is the twist. Sterling smiled. The bank he chose in the Cayman's First Meridian International. Sterling looked at Emma. Emma looked at Derek. First Meridian is a private wealth bank, Emma said softly. Owned by the Vanderwall Group. Derek, you tried to hide money from me in my own bank. The courtroom erupted, laughter mixed with shock. Even the bailiff cracked a smile. Derek Thorne looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. He had tried to cheat the system, unaware that he was living inside the system itself. Judge Harrison banged the gavel, but he didn't look angry. He looked amused. Order, order. I've heard enough. I'm ready to rule on the motion to dismiss the prenup claims and the motion for asset seizure. But before the judge could speak, the doors to the courtroom burst open again. 2 men in suits walked in. They weren't lawyers. They wore FBI windbreakers. Derek Thorne, one of the agents called out. The drama wasn't over. It was just shifting gears. The air in courtroom 4B had turned from tense to radioactive. The 2 FBI agents didn't stop at the bar. They walked straight through the gate, their shoes squeaking on the polished floor. "Derek Thorne?" the lead agent asked again. He was a man with a square jaw and eyes that had seen too many liars to be impressed by a bespoke suit. "I'm Special Agent Miller. You are under arrest." Derek stared at them, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Arrest for what?" "This is a civil divorce hearing. You can't be here." "We aren't here for the divorce, Mr. Thorne," Agent Miller said, pulling a pair of stainless steel handcuffs from his belt. "We're here for wire fraud, structuring financial transactions to evade reporting requirements, and 4 counts of money laundering." Marcus Coburn. Derek's shark of a lawyer physically stepped away from his client. In the legal world, that was the equivalent of a captain abandoning the ship before it even hit the iceberg. "Money laundering." Derek stammered, his face draining of color until it matched his crisp white shirt. I deposited my own money. It's my company." "Actually," Elias Sterling interjected from the other table, looking coolly at his fingernails, "as we established 5 minutes ago, the money belonged to the company, which technically belonged to the creditors, my client. By siphoning operating capital into a personal offshore account to hide it from the divorce proceedings, you didn't just cheat your wife, Derek. You defrauded a federally insured banking institution." "Turn around," Agent Miller barked. "No, this is a mistake, Emma." Derek spun around, looking at the woman he had tormented for the last year. "Emma, tell them. Tell them it was just a misunderstanding. You own the bank, right? You can make this go away. I'm your husband." Emma stood up slowly. She smoothed the fabric of her black dress. She looked at Derek, not with hatred, but with a terrifying calmness. "You're not my husband, Derek," she said softly. "You're a defendant." "I did this for us," Derek screamed as the agent grabbed his wrist and twisted it behind his back. The click-click of the cuffs echoed through the silent room. "I was trying to protect our future." "You were trying to steal $2 million so you could run away with your mistress," Emma corrected him. "And you were so arrogant you thought no one would notice the missing funds." At the mention of mistress, all eyes turned to Jessica Tate in the gallery. She was halfway out of her seat, clutching her Louis Vuitton bag to her chest like a shield. "Agent Miller," Emma said, her voice cutting through the noise. "You might want to check Ms. Tate's handbag." "What?" Jessica shrieked. "I didn't do anything. I'm just the vice president of marketing." "We have reason to believe," Emma continued, looking at Sterling, who nodded, "that the 2-factor authentication device used to authorize the offshore transfers is currently in Ms. Tate's possession. Derek wasn't smart enough to figure out the banking software on his own. She helped him." Agent Miller signaled to his partner. The second agent moved toward the gallery. "Ma'am, I need you to hand over the bag." "No." Jessica backed away, backing into the wooden railing. "He made me do it. He told me he would divorce her and we'd live on a yacht in the Mediterranean. I just authorized the transfers." "That," the agent said, taking the bag from her trembling hands, "is a confession, Ms. Tate. You have the right to remain silent." As the agents marched both Derek and Jessica out of the courtroom, Derek looked back one last time. His veneer of success was gone. The suit looked like a costume. The arrogance was replaced by the terrified look of a man realizing his life is over. "Emma!" he wailed, the sound echoing down the hallway. "Emma, please!" The door swung shut. The silence that followed was heavy. Judge Harrison took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He looked at the empty defense table, then at Emma. "Well," the judge sighed, "in 20 years on the bench, I have never seen a respondent arrest the plaintiff. Mr. Sterling, I assume you have a motion prepared." "I do, Your Honor," Sterling said, sliding a paper across the bench. "Motion for summary judgment. We ask for immediate dissolution of the marriage, full restoration of Ms. Vanderwall's name and legal title to all assets seized by the FBI to be returned to the rightful owner, Thorntech, and by extension, VW Holdings, once the investigation clears." "Granted," Judge Harrison said, banging the gavel. "Ms. Vanderwall, Or I should say, Ms. Vanderwall, you are free to go. And good luck. Emma nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. She turned to Arthur, who was waiting with her trench coat. But she didn't put it on. She draped it over her arm. She didn't need to hide anymore. Arthur, she said, call the car, and tell the board of directors at Thorntech to meet me in the conference room in 1 hour. We have a company to save. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the Seattle streets glistening like polished obsidian. But for the employees of Thorntech, the storm was just beginning. News of Derek Thorne's arrest had hit the internet within minutes of the handcuffs clicking shut. By the time Emma's black Escalade pulled up to the glass and steel headquarters of the company, news vans were already swarming the lobby. Emma watched them from behind the tinted glass. She didn't feel fear. She felt a cold, clinical precision. For 7 years she had walked into this building to bring Derek lunch, only to be sneered at by the receptionist and ignored by the executives. They had seen a housewife. Today they would see the landlord. Are you ready, Ms. Vanderwall? Elias Sterling asked, sitting opposite her. He was checking his phone, monitoring the stock price, which was currently in free fall. I'm ready, Elias, Emma said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a new ID badge. It didn't say visitor, it said interim CEO. Let's go clean house. Arthur opened the door. Emma stepped onto the pavement. The cameras flashed a blinding strobe light of attention. She ignored the shouted questions. Did you know about the fraud? Is the company going under? And walked straight for the revolving doors flanked by Arthur and Elias. Inside the lobby was chaos. People were shouting into phones, shredding documents, and running around with the panic of rats on a sinking ship. Standing by the elevators was Greg Manson, the chief operating officer. He was a man who had often made jokes about Emma's allowance within earshot of her. He saw her coming and puffed out his chest, blocking her path to the turnstiles. Emma, Greg said, his voice dripping with false sympathy but underlined with panic. Look, this is a disaster. But you can't just waltz in here. This is a place of business, not a divorce court. You need to go home and let the adults handle this crisis. Emma stopped. She looked at Greg's shoes, scuffed cheap leather. Then she looked at his eyes. Greg, she said calmly, do you know who owns the server farm in Oregon that hosts the Hydra protocol? Greg blinked. What a holding company. VW something. Vanderwall right, Emma finished for him. Me. I just cut the connection. As of 5 minutes ago, Thorntech is offline. No app, no website, no revenue. The color drained from Greg's face. You killed the platform. Are you insane? I put it in a medically induced coma to stop the infection, Emma said, stepping closer. And the infection, Greg, is you. You signed off on the marketing expenses that Derek and Jessica used to launder money. You're not the COO anymore. You're a liability. She turned to the security guard, a man named Mike, who she had always made a point to greet by name even when Derek ignored him. Mike, Emma said softly, please escort Mr. Manson out of the building. His keycard has been deactivated. Mike didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, grabbing the stunned COO by the arm. Let's go, Mr. Manson. Don't make a scene. Emma walked through the turnstiles, the sound of her heels echoing like gunshots in the suddenly silent lobby. She entered the elevator, Elias beside her. As the doors closed, shutting out the chaos of the lobby, she took a deep breath. That was ruthless. Elias noted a hint of admiration in his voice. That was necessary, Emma replied, watching the numbers climb. Derek built a culture of arrogance. I have to burn it down before I can build something that lasts. When the doors opened on the executive floor, the staff was waiting. They looked terrified. These were the coders, the designers, the assistants, the people who actually did the work, while Derek played the visionary. Emma walked to the center of the open plan office. She didn't stand on a desk. She simply stood tall. My name is Emma Vanderwall, she announced, her voice projecting clearly. Many of you know me as Derek's wife. Some of you know me as the woman who brought coffee. But from this moment on, you will know me as the owner of this company. She paused, making eye contact with the room. Derek Thorne lied to you. He stole from this company to fund a lifestyle he didn't earn. He risked your jobs and your pensions. But I am not Derek. I am the one who wrote the patch for the Hydra Protocol 3 years ago. I am the one who secured the initial funding, and I am the one who is going to save this ship. A murmur went through the crowd. She wrote the patch. I won't lie to you, Emma continued. The next few months will be brutal. The stock is tanking. The press is going to eat us alive. But if you stay, if you trust me, we will rebuild. And we will do it with integrity. No more rock star CEOs, just hard work and good code. Who is with me? For a second there was silence. Then a young developer in the back, a girl Emma recognized as the one Derek had threatened to fire last Christmas, started to clap. Then another. Then the whole room. It wasn't a cheer of victory. It was the applause of relief. The tyrant was gone. The queen had arrived. The visiting room smelled of industrial cleaner and despair. It was a stark contrast to the boardroom Emma now commanded. She sat on a metal stool, her hands folded neatly on the stainless steel table. She wore a cream-colored cashmere suit, impeccable and bright against the gray cinder-block walls. She looked like a beacon of light in a tomb. The heavy steel door buzzed and clanked open. Derek shuffled in. The transformation was shocking. The bespoke Italian suits were gone, replaced by a baggy bright orange jumpsuit with a number stenciled on the chest. His hair, usually gelled to perfection, was greasy and matted. He hadn't shaved in days. But it was his eyes that were the most different. The arrogance was extinguished, replaced by a hollow, frantic darting. He sat down, the chains around his waist, clinking against the table. He looked at Emma, and for a moment he tried to summon the old Derek. He tried to sneer. "Came to gloat," he rasped. His voice was hoarse. "I came to bring you this," Emma said, sliding a single piece of paper across the table. Derek looked at it. It was a formal offer. "What is this?" "It's a plea regarding the intellectual property." Emma explained, her tone conversational, as if they were discussing dinner plans. "If you sign over all remaining rights to the Thorn name and trademark, I will petition the board not to sue you personally for the unauthorized use of company funds. It will save you about $2 million in civil restitution." Derek laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "You're taking my name. You're going to erase me." "You erased yourself, Derek," Emma said. "The brand is toxic. I'm rebranding. The company will be called Aegis. It means shield or protection. Something you never offered me." Derek leaned forward, his hands gripping the table edge. "Why, Emma? Why did you do it this way? You could have just told me. You could have told me you were rich. We could have been a power couple. We could have ruled this city." "If I had told you," Emma said sadly, "you would have loved the money, not me. I gave you 7 years, Derek. 7 years to show me who you really were. And you did. You showed me you were a man who would trade a loyal wife for a younger model the second you got a taste of success. You showed me that your love was conditional on my submission." "I loved you," Derek shouted, drawing a sharp look from the guard in the corner. He lowered his voice, desperate. "Emma, please, I can't do this. 5 years I won't survive in here. You have connections. You know the governor. Make a call. Get me house arrest. Please. I'll do anything. I'll sign the papers. I'll disappear. Just get me out of this cage." Emma looked at him. She remembered the nights she had rubbed his back when he was stressed. She remembered the sacrifices. And she remembered the look on his face outside the courthouse when he told her she was pathetic. She stood up. "I can't do that, Derek." "Why not?" He pleaded, tears streaming down his face now. "Because you hate me." "No," Emma said, picking up her purse. "Because I don't care enough to hate you. Hate requires energy. You're just a bad investment that I've finally written off." She turned to leave. "Wait," Derek yelled. "What about Jessica? Is she helping you? Is she testifying?" Emma paused at the door. She looked back over her shoulder. "Jessica," Emma smiled faintly. "Jessica handed over your laptop password to the FBI before they even asked for it. She told them you forced her to make the transfers. She's walking away with probation, Derek. Even your perfect mistress knew when to jump ship. Derek slumped back in his chair, his mouth open in silent horror. The betrayal was complete. "Goodbye, Derek," Emma said. She walked out of the heavy steel doors and didn't look back. As she stepped into the sunlight of the parking lot, she took a deep breath of fresh air. It tasted like freedom. The grand ballroom of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel was transformed. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the hundreds of guests, tech moguls, politicians, and the elite of Seattle society. At the center of it all was Emma. She was wearing a gown of deep emerald green velvet that hugged her form, accessorized with a simple yet stunning diamond necklace, a Vanderwall family heirloom she had retrieved from the vault. She was laughing at a joke made by the senator holding a flute of sparkling water. She looked radiant. Not just wealthy, but happy. Elias Sterling approached her carrying 2 glasses of champagne. He looked dashing in a tuxedo. "A toast?" Elias said, handing her a glass. "To what?" Emma asked, smiling. "To the Founders Initiative," Elias said, gesturing to the banner behind the stage. "You just raised $5 million for underprivileged coding students in one night. You've done more for this city in 6 months than Derek did in 6 years. It's not hard to do good when you're not obsessed with looking good," Emma replied, clinking her glass against his. "The rebranding is a success, by the way," Elias noted. "Stock is up 40%. The board wants to make your position permanent. No more interim CEO. Emma looked out over the crowd. She saw the faces of people who used to ignore her. Now they were lining up to shake her hand. "I'm not sure," Emma mused. "I was thinking of stepping back, hiring a CEO to run the day-to-day. I have other projects I want to pursue." "Oh." Elias raised an eyebrow. "What could be bigger than running a tech empire?" Emma smiled, a mischievous glint in her eye. "I bought the building," she said. "Which building?" "The one where the coffee shop is," Emma said. "And the block around it. I'm going to tear it down and build affordable housing for single mothers. I'm going to call it the Emma House." Elias chuckled, shaking his head. "You are relentless, Ms. Vanderwall." "I'm just getting started, Elias." A hush fell over the room as the announcer stepped to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the woman of the hour, the CEO of Aegis Systems, Emma Vanderwall." The applause was thunderous. It wasn't polite applause, it was a roar of respect. Emma handed her glass to Elias. She smoothed her dress. She looked at the stage. 6 months ago, she was a discarded wife in a thrift store coat, standing in the rain, mocked by the man she loved. She had been stripped of her dignity, her home, and her pride. But they had forgotten one thing. You can strip a queen of her castle, you can strip her of her army, but you cannot strip her of her blood. Emma walked toward the stage, her head held high. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't the ex-wife. She wasn't the victim. She stepped into the spotlight, the blinding white light washing over her. She smiled at the camera broadcasting to the giant screens. She was Emma Vanderwall, and she had won. Emma's journey from the courtroom steps to the CEO's office is more than just a revenge story, it's a masterclass in self-worth. Derek made the fatal mistake of valuing the package over the contents. He chased the illusion of wealth and lost the reality of it. Emma proved that true power doesn't scream. It whispers. It waits. And when the time is right, it strikes with the precision of a surgeon. We often let others define our value based on what we wear or what we drive. But Emma reminds us that your true net worth is what you carry inside your head and your heart. She didn't need Derek's money. She had her own. But more importantly, she had the grit to survive without it. Who else got chills when Emma walked into that boardroom? I know I did. If you loved seeing Derek get exactly what he deserved, destroy that like button right now. Let's see if we can get this video to 10,000 likes for Queen Emma. And listen, if you are new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You do not want to miss our next story. It's about a billionaire boss who goes undercover as a janitor to find out which of his employees is stealing from him, and the twist will blow your mind. Comment below. What would you name your company if you took it over from your ex? I'll pin the best answer. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and remember, never judge a book by its cover.